Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the webinar focused on manufacturing success in the 21st century. I'm Ann Cosgrove, the Editorial Director of Business Facilities, and today's discussion is presented by the Greater Richmond Partnership of Virginia. We are looking forward to an interesting conversation today with our panelists. But before we get started, I would like to cover a few housekeeping items. We will have a question and answer session toward the end or at the end of the conversation, and we do want to welcome all your questions. So please note the question box in your screen. You can send your questions in at any time, and we will address them after the presentation. If you do have any non-content related question, you can also send those there, and a member on our team will answer you directly. So let's get started. There are a number of key ingredients that formulate success in manufacturing, such as the right strategy, the right workforce, and the right location. So our panelists today will be discussing strategies that manufacturing leaders are using to grow their business. And we'll also cover some industry trends in manufacturing, such as machine learning and sustainability. And we'll get right into it with our panelists. Today, we're joined by Bryant Michael, Troy Hagenbach, and Jennifer Wakefield. So Bryant is the Vice President of Supply Chain at Sabra Dipping Company. He has enjoyed success, the company has enjoyed success in the Greater Richmond, Virginia market for over 15 years. A driven and innovative leader, Brian is an alumnus of Ohio State University with a degree in chemical engineering. With 14 years of experience in supply chain management at PepsiCo, Sabra's parent company, Brian has worked across 5 facilities in the food industry, specializing in ready-to-eat products. Currently at the Sabra facility in Chesterfield County, Virginia, Brian oversees the end-to-end supply chain, and known for his down-to-earth approach, he's passionate about leveraging technology and strategic thinking to tackle the complex industry challenges we face today. Then we have Troy Hagenbach. He is the Chief Operating Officer of TemperPack, and that's a sustainable packaging company that's disrupting the traditional styrofoam-based insulation industry. Troy is a purpose, people, and growth-oriented business leader with 20-plus years of experience in paper manufacturing and the converting industries. Prior to joining TemperPack, Troy held various management roles in commercial printing, envelope, and corrugated businesses across multiple international organizations, such as International Paper, DS Smith, and Senza. At TemperPack, Troy leads operations across 3 manufacturing sites, including their Henrico County, Virginia facility, and he holds an electrical engineering degree from Penn State University. We're also joined by Jennifer Wakefield. She is the president and CEO of the Greater Richmond Partnership, the regional economic development organization for the Richmond region in Virginia. Jennifer has more than 20 years of marketing experience, 18 of those in economic development. She's served in management roles for more than 10 years and is on the board of the International Economic Development Council. So we're really looking forward to a great talk here today with all the different perspectives that you all are bringing, and of course the questions toward the end. So we do welcome those attendees listening. First, Brian, I'm going to turn my first question to you, and that is to get a sense for your day-to-day duties and your focus as the Vice President of Supply Chain at Sabra. Can you explain some of your day-to-day duties?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Dan. So the piece that I would say that my job starts with procurement all the way through manufacturing, warehouse warehouse logistics, and S&OP. And so my job is more or less thinking about what does the future look like for Sabra from a distribution standpoint, manufacturing, and also what's the right co-manufacturing versus in-house production strategy. So my team is really focused on how do we go and figure out the flexibility within our current 4 walls. And if we need to go and enhance that flexibility beyond the 4 walls, what's the right strategy beyond that? So finding either the right co-man operation or how do I redesign the facility or expand based upon our recent history of growth within our perimeter. And so the focus is really about how do we go and grow the organization and really cut out costs. 90% of the costs within the organization fall under my control. So the big focus within us is how do you grow, how do you remain flexible and agile based upon where the consumer is growing, but also pulling out costs at the same time.
Well, thank you. And you mentioned growth there, the company's growth. So Sabra operates the world's largest hummus facility in Greater Richmond. So I was wondering if you can talk to us a little bit about Sabra's continued growth in the region and what are some of the things that have contributed to that, and how has the company and yourself responded to that growth?
Yeah, it's a great question. So Sabra started back in the mid-'80s up in New York, and it was a single entity individual that started the company. And he sold 50% of his ownership in the early 2000s, and then the other 50% to PepsiCo, who I'm an employee of, in about 2008. And at that point in time, it became where they realized the facility they were operating out of in New York couldn't satisfy the demand that hummus was warranting within the U.S. market. And the facility here in Richmond got built in 2010. And from 2010 through most of the teen years of 2000, the company grew at double digits, 15 to 16% year over year. So there's actually three different expansions that we had at this facility. The first one was in 2010, the second one was 2014, and then we expanded again in 2018. And this facility was really built in this area for a few reasons. One, the logistics side to it of 60% of our product is on the East Coast, so it's easy logistically to get from place to place. And then it also has port access. So when Sabra began with Strauss and PepsiCo, Strauss is an Israeli company, about 90% of the raw materials came from overseas. So having access to both the land distribution, but also the sea to be able to import through the ports was very, very important. And most recently, we get our tahini or some of our tahini for our product from Israel, which would come through the port here in Richmond, the Port of Virginia. So having the logistics was a very big importance, and that's where this facility was built all through the growth of this organization through the last about 15 years since PepsiCo and Strauss helped.
That's great too. 3 expansions in the past 15 years. That's wonderful. So we'll turn to Troy. We'd like to hear some of your experience at TemperPack in the Greater Richmond area. And I understand that TemperPack has an interesting startup story. So maybe we'll begin there. Can you talk about the company and how it was founded?
Sure. Good afternoon, Ann, and really pleasure to speak to everyone today. Thanks for having us. Yeah, I mean, TemperPack started in 2015, so it's a fairly new company. Started with 3 college kids getting together in college, and I can imagine what they were doing, but they had this innovative idea to replace packaging with sustainable materials. You know, we all know styrofoam, EPS, all of those things last 20,000 years in a landfill. And, you know, they're very environmentally conscious, and they wanted to do something different and eliminate that challenge and eliminate that problem. So they worked hard. These gentlemen were innovative. They were, design engineers and material scientists, and they just worked hard at developing this new product. And the important part of it is it's not just sustainable, but it's also at scale that we can deliver and produce at a large scale for a lot of customers. And that's probably the difference maker. A lot that TemperPack brings to the table is that we can produce an alternative, sustainable product at scale for large customers. And that's significant. And we've worked hard at that. And, over the last, 9 years, the company has grown very significantly, starting in Richmond, where in Richmond it started out that we were outsourcing manufacturing, but quickly brought that internal and grew in the Richmond area into different areas. And now we're located up near the racetrack in Henrico County. And then we've also moved throughout the United States, and now we have sites in Las Vegas and Michigan as well.
Wonderful. So the TemperPack's product offering has matured over these past 15 years as well, as you just mentioned, really some relatively rapid growth from what I'm gathering. So what I understand is there's a Wavecraft machine, which is one of the, dare I say, latest introductions. So can you please discuss that invention?
Yeah, the Wavecraft machine is very unique, and it's very interesting product. So it's 100% paper-based insulating materials or protective packaging materials. And what's innovative about that machine is that machine actually goes and sits on the customer's floor, and they can actually produce the insulating materials at their own site on demand. And that's very significant because it eliminates all of the freight that goes around shipping insulating materials. Insulating materials are very light. So the cost of shipping insulating materials is very expensive. So the innovation on the Wavecraft, not only is it 100% paper-based, but it is also sits on the customer's manufacturing floor.
So you're adding sustainability into your process there as well, into your business as well.
100% correct.
Interesting. But let's turn to employment workforce. That's of course always important to manufacturers, and what I understand is that, well, we know unemployment is still a challenge for manufacturers, and it's under 3% for the state of Virginia as well as Richmond right now. So Troy and Bryant, whoever, I'll throw this out to either of you. How are you adjusting to these incredible unemployment rates over the past several years? How are you adjusting with each of your company's needs? And if you can share a little bit about that, what your experience has been.
I can take it from a Sabra perspective, and I could actually from a PepsiCo too. One of the biggest pieces that we've really done is automation. So looking at automation, how do we supplement with the constraints within the workforce with automation? The one piece I would say with that is it's created a different constraint of needing more technical individuals, which has added a little bit of complexity. But one of the ways that we've worked around that is creating partnerships with some technical schools to be able to show the individuals that are going to those schools a path from a career perspective. So going into those facilities and talking and working with the teachers and the students has created a different pipeline than what we had in the past, but it's also solving for I would say, an unintended consequences of the automation phase. But it's also a benefit of the automation that we have higher paying wages. So it's kind of a 2-for-1 of what this path has been for us. But working with those technical schools has been a very good kind of pipeline for us to fill these positions as we've shifted to a little bit more technical positions in the facilities.
Okay, thank you.
I would say the same for TemperPack is very similar to Sabra. We've really focused on innovating on, the technical side of things, really tried to put more automation into our facilities. The one thing that's unique about TemperPack is we are a seasonal business that we have, obviously the need for cold chain insulation is much more significant in the summer than it is during the winter time. So we do see a little bit of a transient, workforce from that aspect. We don't have a problem getting employees and bringing that transient force in. There's plenty of local candidates available. The one thing I would say is it's become even more important to retain those individuals and treat them properly with the proper wages, because there's a lot of talent in the area. And, and exactly like Bryant said, there's a lot of technical talent, and we're doing some of the similar things with the colleges, but there's also that other workforce out there that you need to fill all of your roles. And the key is you find good people. The key is retaining them.
Okay. Now you mentioned that proactive approaches that both of you have taken to success. And I'm wondering, do you still see there being an active challenge at this point in 2024? Is there an end in sight to the challenge, or do you feel like you're kind of over that hump of post-pandemic? Where do you see that for yourselves?
I don't see the challenge, like similar to Troy. We find talent pretty easily. Okay. I do think that it's much better now than it was during the pandemic. And I also think that there's a little bit different company loyalty now versus the pandemic as well. So working on that retention through the pandemic has created a competitive advantage, I would say, to the organizations that truly did that. Listen to the employees a little bit more than what we probably would have in the past. And it's paid dividends in our retention. I mean, I would say that of the facilities I've worked at, this is one of the best that we've found from an employee, and my retention's the best that I've had at any of the facilities. And I would, my hourly retention is, or turnover is less than 10%, which is fantastic to see. Some of my other facilities in other parts of the country, it's 20-30%. To see that in the single digits, it's fantastic.
Certainly. Troy?
Yeah, I think it's again, it goes around retention. The more you can retain, the less you have to go out and look for people. We all know it's expensive to go out and look for people. But really getting and sharing as much as possible with employees is so helpful. You know, TemperPack's mission and purpose as being a company, you know, our employees really buy into that. They understand they're doing something that's bigger, you know, that we're doing something for the environment. And as we communicate that out into the workforce or out into the community, they know us better and they know what they're coming to. And again, you treat the people right, you treat them with pay and with the benefits that they want, that we all want. It just helps tremendously in the retention program.
So you both mentioned training schools, the technical schools within the Greater Richmond area as being beneficial. So that's wonderful to hear. And I wonder, are there any other, before we wrap up this question, I'm just wondering if there's any other kind of creative solutions or resources that spring to mind that you've been able to utilize during this time, or has it mainly been the training schools and focusing on that retention, technical schools and focusing on the retention?
I would say that's probably the biggest drivers that we do. The other one that we put into place is hiring bonuses for our employees. And there's a pride in employees bringing somebody that they know in, getting a bonus because of it. But there's also a factor of accountability with them, that they want to make sure that they're bringing in good talent to us, because they know what happens if they don't. In terms, they will struggle. And so that was another way that we've been able to do this. And then the last one that we've kind of used on a as needed basis is job fairs. And I would say it's not as frequent because of the retention piece that we have, that we've needed to do that. It's more of when we've seen a spike in demand or something's changed within our business that we got to change fairly quickly. But that would be the last one that we've kind of done, besides the normal just job postings that we've had pretty good candidate flow on.
Yeah, back when TemperPack was growing, I'd also say that the local development office was very beneficial in helping us, you know, find individuals, going to the right places, whether it was, you know, some agencies or even to churches or other groups in the area. And they helped us tremendously. We've obviously, same as Bryant, reached out to some of the local colleges, technical schools, and really developing some internships and actually some senior projects and things like that from the technical side. I mean, there's some excellent schools around, and a lot of our engineers are local from the Richmond area.
Thank you. So Jennifer, I'm going to pose a few questions to you because obviously you have a great perspective, and thank you, gentlemen, for that. You have a wonderful perspective being the leadership at the Greater Richmond Partnership. So I do want to staying on workforce for a bit. How are you seeing manufacturing making location decisions in general, but also when unemployment has been so low everywhere? Let's stay on that for a moment, because I'd be interested to hear what had gone on over recently and then what's going on now. You know.
Sure. Well, thankfully, we are a net migrator of talent here in the Richmond market. So we are growing faster than the rest of the state, and we are growing faster than the United States on average as well. Within 150 miles, we are located really ideally right in between Raleigh and DC. We have got access to Hampton Roads to the east, and then universities that are based just to our west at the University of Virginia and and Virginia Tech University. And then we have our hometown universities that are here as well, and community colleges. And so I know that both Troy and Bryant were talking about working with technical schools. And then we have an alliance of our community colleges that are based here, the Community College Workforce Alliance, which is able to create custom programs with employers as their needs arise. In addition to that, our state partners, the Virginia Economic Development Partnership, has a really interesting talent accelerator program, which was just named the #1 talent accelerator in the nation. They do a unique program where when we are launching projects or announcing company announcements, they are also working on a website to help try and find and identify the talent that will go to work for those companies.
Yes, I understand that they had worked with Lego, who is coming to the areas, building in the area now, correct? The talent accelerator program.
The talent accelerator did launch a website specifically for Lego careers on the day that we made the announcement. They've worked with many other companies as well.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that. So let's switch gears to sustainability. We have talked about TemperPack with the sustainability focus, but obviously bringing that back to sustainability overall for industry. And I wanted to ask both Brian and Troy some questions there in terms of, you know, what kind of actions you're taking, maybe what your company are currently focused on or concerned about when it comes to that. So Brian, I'll pose this question to you. There is obviously food waste, I would imagine, in your manufacturing process. So what is your company doing to help eliminate landfill waste from your perspective?
It's a great question. It's a question I ask my team every single day. How do we give every chickpea a chance to be in someone's stomach rather than in a landfill? And so the first priority we try to do is how do we eliminate all the waste that we do create? And unfortunately, at the startups and shutdowns, there's just not the right composition of product that then goes into waste. And what we've kind of been doing is an evolution of where this waste goes to. The first phase of it was to landfills. And when we created that waste stream, it wasn't beneficial because it was filling the landfills. And so what we then tasked ourselves to say is, how do we find something a little bit more green, a little bit more useful? And we evolved into sending it to compost. So using it to create and giving back into kind of a fertilizer for things to grow in the future. This last wave of what we've been working on is with a local company to essentially convert it into fuel. So creating the waste into a biofuel. So it's using those that carbon footprint of our product and converting it into a usable fuel that can essentially create an energy for the future. So it's just in the beginning stages as we work towards that evolution, but we're excited about what that partnership could be to essentially, one, save money because it's saving out of going to a compost stream, but then also using it as an alternative for good with the environment.
And you mentioned you were able to work with a local company for these waste to biomass. So
Exactly it.
So Troy, your company's sustainability objectives are clear, but can you also expand on the company's innovations towards sustainability? What are some things that you continue to do or are actively working on now?
Sure, that's very near and dear to everyone at TemperPack. And you know, when the company started and innovated, you know, one of the first materials was jute, or which is basically denim fibers pieces, and they were packing insulating materials with those denim fibers, and they found it quickly that that was really not something that they could continue to do at scale. So that's when the innovation started, with looking at other materials. And the base of our insulating materials right now is mainly cornstarch and paper. So it's very exciting how we've moved and how we've been able to progress. And now all of our products are curbside recyclable with corrugated. So we produce a lot of products that go into home food delivery services or even pet food delivery services. And those materials, as they're received, once that customer pulls out their dog food or their meat that they're going to cook for dinner, they can take our materials and recycle them with standard curbside recycling materials like corrugated, which is incredible. And then we talked a little bit about Wavecraft and how Wavecraft then has taken it to that next step. So now we're eliminating a lot of the freight and a lot of those carbon dioxide emissions that go into the atmosphere with all of the freight. But the company has done just tremendous things, you know, replacing styrofoam with our products. We've already eliminated like over 12,000 metric tons of EPS that would have gone to landfills, that is now in our product and is being curbside recyclable. So there's a tremendous amount of innovation. We continue to look at it, just like Brian talked about every day. We ask ourselves, how can we reduce our waste? Can we reduce our footprint? We measure those things. We report on those things, and we're constantly looking at being more innovative. Reusing our waste back into the process itself is significant for us. So we're working a point in time that we'll be a net zero producer of waste. So we'll be able to either reuse it or recycle it.
Thank you. we're talking about innovation and looking toward the future, and also we mentioned a little bit about automation with the workforce, workforce related. But so I'd like to just jump to AI, machine learning. A lot of folks in the industry are talking about that, and I wanted to give a chance to maybe talk about that a little bit to get any insight from either of you. That are either of your companies currently utilizing machine learning in your processes or AI in some way at your facilities, or what is the status there?
I can take the lead on this one. So I think the parent company, PepsiCo, is a little bit further along than what we are right now from a Sabra standpoint. Sabra, one of the pieces that we're looking at is Copilot. So using Copilot from a more of an office space environment, sorting our emails, making us a little bit more efficient in that manner. One of the pieces for the future that we're looking at is how do we use AI to be able to essentially take our shift reports and shift performance and help us identify faster, because we have lots of data. The problem is we can't interpret the data as efficiently as AI can based upon some of the prototypes and data that we've seen. So that's kind of the next evolution as we go and evolve our automation strategy, is how do we go and incorporate AI at the same time, to be able to tackle two birds with one stone as we go and collect more data. How do we use the data?
Thank you.
Yeah, similarly, we work hard at automation and trying to make things easier for our production and more repeatable and better quality. I would say the area that we're probably getting a little bit more into AI is just on reliability of equipment, the continuous monitoring of the machines, see how they're responding, whether it's vibration, heat, temperature, or other fluctuations in the process. So we're gathering that data, and then we use some AI tools to analyze that, and that helps us with PM or change outs of machines before they break down. So that's kind of the area that we're really trying to get more forward thinking on and using AI to do that.
Thank you for that. Let's talk a bit about your company's expansions within the Greater Richmond area. The bigger picture of business overall. We've dove into some specific areas, and I do want to understand, since we are talking to relocation and expansion site selection audience here, I want to give a little bit of insight in that regard too. So Troy, in Henrico County, your company is located there and has expanded within that location. So I did want to ask you, how have they helped? How has the county, Henrico County, helped you throughout the years in terms of when you come upon a need or making a decision about expanding or specific things you might need for that expansion? What are some things that they've helped you with?
Sure. Henrico County has helped us in many ways. One of the areas that we're looking currently is, there's some R&D things that we're looking at that potentially will be some tax credits, some things like that. One of the biggest ways is about a year ago, as I mentioned, we're a large starch consumer, and a couple of years ago, we were bringing all of our starch in by truck. So a lot of trucks going across a lot of highways, going through Henrico County, obviously, and delivering to our facilities. So about 2 years ago, we started a project where we wanted to bring that starch in by rail. And there's an old rail spur in our development, and Henrico County stepped up with some grants to help us rebuild that rail spur. And now that rail spur has been rebuilt, and we've been able to, one, reduce the amount of trucks going across all the local highways, but has also reduced our cost structure as well, because now we bring it in larger bulk quantities. They've also been helpful in some other areas that we're looking at. There's things we're trying to consider potential international markets, or even moving some of our local manufacturing processes to an international market, and they're helping us with some of those areas as well.
Thank you. So Brian, can you tell me why Chesterfield County was chosen for the facility that you operate, and the subsequent expansions, the facility you operate?
I talked a little bit about it earlier. So Chesterfield was chosen mostly because I have access to 3 forms of transportation. I can get rail, I can get truck, and I can get sea based upon the port of Virginia. So when we were starting up in 2008, the Greater Richmond Partnership and the Virginia Economic Development was key to be able to get this facility in this area. And when you're moving from New York down to an area where you don't have a footprint, finding the right employees and starting up from nothing was huge to be able to start that. And the subsequent expansions have all went very, very well to be able to go find the right employees. We really haven't ran into a problem over the course of the 14, 15 years we've been here of having a workforce that is sufficient to always being in production, even through COVID. We rarely ran into issues of needing to shut down facilities, even when we had folks out. So the area was really key based upon the distribution and the importing of materials, like I talked about, first from Israel, based upon the relationships that were had. And then as the markets grew and matured within the United States for the materials that we use as raw materials, the other transportations became much more prevalent between rail that we're bringing from chickpeas from the Pac Northwest. We're bringing tahini from Mexico. So seeing those operations and maturing within the U.S. has been vital to have all three of those as a ability to bring in materials and keeping costs at a advantage for us.
Thank you. And Brian, while I have you on that track, you had mentioned some of the supplies for use for your product. And I do want to step back, and I apologize to the audience. We've gotten a few comments, but wanting to understand what your products are, kind of in a laid out fashion. I'll just say that. So
Yeah.
Could you kind of just give a quick? We've talked about hummus, the largest hummus facility in the world, being in the Richmond area. Could you just kind of give a quick overview to the audience to catch them up, and then try to ask
sure.
the same?
Yeah, sure. So this facility that we have in Virginia is a hummus facility. So all of our hummus within the U.S. is distributed, and the vast majority is made out of this facility here in Richmond, Virginia. We also have a kind of a section of our business that's guacamole. The guacamole is obviously not made here. It's made in Mexico, but it's all distributed out of Virginia. So we import everything here to Virginia to create a centralized location and then export across the U.S., but also into Canada. So this hub that we have here in Richmond is fantastic from a logistics standpoint of servicing our consumer base, and especially here in the U.S. and Canada.
Thank you. And Troy, could you please give us a quick overview? I know we've talked about Wavecraft and we've talked about the sustainability goals and and some of your markets, but if you could explain that as well.
Sure, no problem. I think everyone knows what hummus is, but maybe not everyone knows what TemperPack does. And I do have a sample here. So this would be like a home delivery food box or pet food box. And, this obviously gets shipped to consumers' homes. We do not do the corrugated piece, but we do the insulating piece that's inside and keeps the materials inside cold and insulated from the surrounding areas. We are heavily in food delivery products, home food delivery products, pet food delivery, life sciences, so pharmaceuticals, and then also that we have so that's the Climacell product, sorry. And then we also have a green cell product that is made in Michigan, and that's actually dissolvable by water, the insulation. So that's a really unique product that we have out in Michigan. And then again, the Wavecraft product is 100% paper, and that does similar things. And again, it's materials and protective packaging for electronics and or dog food or pet food services.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen, for that, for jumping in and sharing that. So let's talk about energy. It's obviously important to many companies, including the manufacturing sector. So manufacturers must have strong ties to their utility partners to sustain operations. And I just wanted to get the sense from both of you, how important is the energy mix to overall operational costs? More so meaning, are you looking into have you been changing your operational mix in recent years? But also, have you seen challenges and how have you overcome them? Because I know that's really top of mind these days as far as my concern. So if you can talk about anything that's going on with energy with your facilities in the Richmond region, that would be great. Whoever would like to take that first.
I don't mind taking it first. So the big piece that we found is the partnerships with the local suppliers has been very key. So one of the pieces of the three that we use, the natural gas has probably been the most constrained, but what we have found is the supply is being worked on very diligently, and a lot of the supply will be changing, or the ability to supply over the next handful of years. And I would be remiss to say that we don't have issues with supply. It's more that there's going to be a more abundance to be able to have a better price advantage than where we're at currently. And this is all learnings from our current supplier and having the conversations and just talking it through with them. And what I'm excited about is those main pipelines being installed from a natural gas standpoint to really change that future over the coming years. From an electric standpoint, we've never really had a problem, and from the conversations we had, it seems like we're in a good place. The one piece that we are working on is from more of a sustainability side, is taking a look at what programs are out there to essentially go to solar. So how do we take advantage of our property, either the roof or the green space that we have, to convert some of our energy usage to solar produced on site. And those have been really good discussions with our supplier as well, to see what they know for credits, and also how do they help tie this in for our manufacturing facility.
From TemperPack side, we're a medium consumer of electric energy, and we're located in a warehouse location. And one of the things that we had to do is work with the local utility to bring in more power into the facility, because we have some large equipment that consumes a lot of electricity, and there just wasn't enough service to the warehouse. There are long lead time items on anything electrical anymore, as most people probably know. But our local electric company did a great job. They've been able to deliver us the service. They installed new service into our facilities. And then we've been working with them more around reliability lately. And they've been upgrading their systems. They've been doing a better job at, prevention of downtime events for when there's storms, thunderstorms, as we all have in the summer. So they've really done a good job at the preventative maintenance of their systems to make sure the power system is more reliable.
Thank you. We actually have a question from the audience, some questions coming in. So I did want to jump in since we're talking a bit about logistics just a few minutes ago. So I hope that you can, the three of you, if you don't mind jumping in. And the question is, what advice can you give to smaller manufacturers who struggle with the cost of logistics and shipping as we try to grow into something larger?
So I guess it kind of depends on the type. So the majority of what I send is refrigerated transportation. And the piece that we've found is finding the right broker to create a relationship with has been hugely important, to find the right avenue to save on costs. And I would tell you that over the course of the last couple of years, it's been a significant benefit to us. Some of these relationships we've had to the point of taking out 10 to 15% of our transportation costs across the country. The other piece I would say is looking at cross dock. So a lot of times what we'll do is we'll do a more efficient main majority mile delivery, and then we'll do a last mile that's a little bit less efficient and higher costs. But being able to use some of these cross docks partnerships has been huge in helping us save some costs versus doing a whole bunch of LTLs or individual shipments to our customers.
Thank you. So Jennifer, I'd like to pose a question to you before we get into more of the Q&A, but I did want to put that out there.
I'm happy to jump on that other question as well,
Sure.
too. From a cost standpoint, I would look into what kind of foreign trade zone that might be in your region as well as opportunities to partner with any ports or inland ports that may be in your area. And then it really just kind of also comes down to where you are as far as costs. We are fortunate that, the Port of Virginia is less than an hour away. There is a Richmond Marine Terminal that is operated out of here. They do have programs for partners that they work with on transporting goods and services from this market. But you can reach 50% of the U.S. population within a day's truck drive. And our electric rates here in the Richmond market are about 8% more affordable than they are in many other places across the US. So it just kind of depends on where you are, and that kind of helps offset costs from a logistics standpoint.
Thank you. So Jennifer, while I have you, I did want to get into the site selection and location decision topic overall in terms of Greater Richmond, and then we'll dive into the Q&A with the audience. So can you talk about how economic developers can assist companies in site location decisions, obviously depending on the spectrum where a company is on the spectrum, where that they may or may not have insight into that process. So I did want to ask you, since we have you here, what kind of things can companies and their teams look into?
Yeah, anytime a company is looking at potentially relocating or expanding their operations, they can reach out to the economic development office in that area. Typically, when companies are looking, though, there's different things that might happen at a state level that might cause people to look at that state. And then they will either work internally or work externally with a consultant. And I see there's a couple site location consultants around here. Hi, George Tobji. Nice to see you. And these consultants can provide a great amount of information and guidance for companies, especially small to medium enterprises who may need the external assistance. And then for the larger companies who may have internal personnel who are working on it, they can help validate whatever findings that may have. But as far as the services that we offer, we can assist, of course, from a site location service, looking at sites and buildings. We do confidential project management assistance, so we sign NDAs all day, every day. We can help assist with connections throughout the community, and that's government, education, and private partners. We are a public-private partnership, as are many of the regional economic development organizations, and so we can help facilitate introductions and make it easier on you as far as getting to know other private businesses that are there and hooking you up with other executives that are in a similar field. So maybe other manufacturers that are already based here that might be willing to answer questions like Brian and Troy are, as far as what they're finding, from a workforce standpoint, et cetera. We can assist and make connections from a finance and an entrepreneurial resource standpoint, as well as a workforce recruitment and training standpoint as well.
Thank you. So Jennifer, one more question. What are some of the site location trends nationally that your team is seeing? Could you comment on that from the national standpoint, and then from what you're seeing, that viewpoint from Richmond?
Sure. Nationally, I mean, we attend a lot of conferences, and we keep in touch with a lot of our site location consultant friends who advise us on what they're hearing, from a larger basis. Right now, of course, we're a couple weeks out from the national election. And so there is a lot of, let's, get past the election date to kind of see what's going to happen. Some of that is because a lot of the projects that we have, we've typically got at least, 40% of our project pipeline is in manufacturing. A lot of those are clean energy companies. And so they're waiting to kind of see what happens or what may transpire as a result of that. We have seen a lot of, in the last 2 years, which has been interesting, companies that are kind of hurrying up and then holding, and then hurrying up and then holding. And so what's happening is that these companies are often ghosting economic development organizations or ghosting the site location consultants that they're working with, and that there's a mentality to hurry up and get information ready. And things have not normalized. Things have started normalizing, right, from the pandemic, but it's still not a normal pre-pandemic kind of time. Right. And so what we have seen, of course, over the last many years is that, previously when companies were looking to, new locations, they were primarily looking only at costs, and cost is a big part of the equation, right? Then they started shifting more toward, is the talent, the specific type of talent that I need now and well into the future, right? And now they're also looking at, because during the pandemic, a lot of people just moved wherever they wanted to locate, and then decided they would either stay remote or they would look at a position in their area. And so now many more companies and consultants are looking at the quality of life and more things like affordable housing in regions. And what is the trend, and what is it that regions are doing to try and make sure that things are more affordable for people, as well as more equitable for people in the region.
Thank you. So I appreciate that. Now, Brian and Troy, I did want to bring a kind of a common thread together for another question to you. And what are the trends that you are seeing in your respective industries surrounding food delivery, cold storage? You both have a common thread there to a degree. So I wanted to get a sense for, in terms of trends that's specific to that industry, or maybe it has to do with logistics concerns and solutions you're finding. What could you comment on that?
From a food industry standpoint, there's probably two major trends. One is fresh. People are evolving more into I want something healthy, fresh, feel good, versus there's a little bit of a regression in terms of processed foods versus a fresh foods, which is good from a Sabra standpoint with guacamole and hummus. And then the other one I would say is the evolution of flavors. So there's a big push of how do you go and evolve your flavor profile versus I would say that in the past it was more of like, here's your steady eddies and we're going to keep the same flavor on the shelf all the time. And now it's how do you refresh? How do you have something like bold, exciting, different, new? I'm excited to share that we're one of the few that are up for the coolest thing made in Virginia. It's a hummus that's Frank's Red Hot. And that's what we're seeing right now is how do you go bring those bold flavors into the market that is unique to what the competition has. And that's the trend that we're seeing that consumers are really demanding.
Yeah, from our standpoint, we're also seeing a shift where convenience is important. So like home food deliveries from our local supermarkets or whether it's Uber Eats or whatever it is. So that convenience piece and that quick and easy to get piece is very important. And so those are some of the markets that we're exploring as well with some of our products, like the Wave Craft product, where it could be made very easily and could be made into a bag. So those food items go into a bag and get delivered and are kept cold for 4, 6, 8 hours in case it has to sit on someone's doorstep. But that's one of the probably key areas that we're looking at, that we're seeing a lot of trends around.
Thank you. So climate resiliency, I do want to talk about that. That's a term that we're seeing bandied about, and it's a very serious issue, of course, just even beyond manufacturing. But I do want to take the opportunity to ask either of you, and Jennifer too, since you're obviously the expert on the region, in the room, I'm wondering that how important is climate resiliency to your operations as far as of the location? We obviously cannot control Mother Nature, but in terms of those calculations that you make, and how to mitigate maybe some things that might occur in Richmond or maybe another location, Bryant, how important is that to you, and what is your company kind of doing about that currently, thinking about it?
So it was very important when this facility was stood up for Sabra, to the point where they worked with insurers to understand where is areas with least risk. And you can never get rid of risk in terms of natural disasters, but this is why one of the areas that was chosen and picked in terms of natural disasters there's a lower risk profile between fires or tornadoes, et cetera, that the insurance providers gives you kind of you're in a high risk zone or a lesser of a risk zones. And that's one of the areas, this is one of the areas that they said was lesser of a risk. And I would say that it's kind of in this like temperate area, like you don't get harsh winters. It stays more mild than you do if you go up north a couple 100 miles, and then it's not quite as severe as the heat and humidity if you go down south a couple 100 miles. So it's kind of in this good little zone versus some of the areas I've worked in the past from a weather standpoint that you're not dealing with the too harshness on the two sides of the equation in winter or summer.
Yeah, similarly here, I mean, just would repeat everything Brian said, and, being 60, 70 miles from the coast also protects us from anything going up the coast, but yet we still have that access to the port. So it's just in a really good location, low risk. We don't really see those tough winters or hurricanes or anything in the area. So that really helps with transportation, making all of the transportation more reliable, as well as just being able to run our facilities. without interruption.
And I would encourage companies who are looking to relocate or expand, as Bryant was indicating, the insurance companies would tell him that you can also go look at the FEMA Natural Risk Index. And you can go see that naturally this is a market with lower risk. And that's why we've got so many data centers that are clustered here in Richmond and throughout Virginia as well.
Thank you. So I want to bring it back to a question we had on workforce and training. Specifically, in the beginning of the hour, we had talked about training, and Bryant, you had mentioned utilizing as well as Troy, some of the technical schools, I'm sorry, within the region. So putting this out to all three of you, the question is, what are some of the skills that you may have utilized in those programs, and what is a general time frame from start to finish to get a employee up to speed and on that floor? Obviously, it may depend on the position, but is there kind of an experience you can share in terms of time frame and planning?
So the way that we've used the trade schools in particular is looking for controls background. And the controls is not necessarily to bring them in as a controls technician, et cetera. It's more to have that background piece as a mechanic. And it's like a starting block from an organization standpoint. And what we've used them in the past for is like an internship program where we'll bring them in either on off hours, the weekend. If they're not going to school in the summer, we'll bring them in the summer. And what that typically is, it's like a 2-year program. And so for 2 years, we're trying to get that individual into this facility to learn. And at the end of it, convert them into a full-time employee is the ideal state. If I don't bring somebody in, it can take me between 6 to call it 9 months to get somebody up to speed from a cold start. So the idea behind the internship program is over that time, we're acclimating them more so that at the end of the 2 years, I got somebody that's ready to go. And it's been a very beneficial program to be able to work through and put that into place to create a better talent pipeline than trying to bring somebody in cold that you don't know the history of that individual, how they're working, are they going to be a good cultural fit? But a 2-year internship, or I like to call it an interview, it's a great way to be able to see how well they're going to fit within our team.
Yeah, those technical schools are key. We're looking for the same type of people that Brian's looking for, those controls with the background and being able to understand systems on the technical side. Then on the non-technical side, is key for us as well, where what's nice is that there are manufacturers in the area, that there are qualified machine operators out there. It may not be on our specific machines, but having that knowledge and understanding of how to operate a machine safely and productively is very important to us. And there is a very good base of people out there for us to go out and recruit from.
Okay, so I think that's it for our questions. I want to thank everyone. Do we have any closing comments from anyone on the panel in terms of manufacturing challenges, what's on the horizon, anything we didn't cover that maybe on your mind or that you'd want to share with others in the audience? We're good.
I would just say really appreciate having us today. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. Okay, well, I want to thank everyone. Of course, Bryant, Troy, and Jennifer, thank you so much for your participation. Thank you for taking all these questions and all the advice for our audience. I also want to thank our audience for attending today and for your attention and your questions. And of course, to Greater Richmond Partnership for helping us to present the webinar. A recording of today's talk will be made available on the Business Facilities website, as well as on the Greater Richmond Partnership website, and that is grpva.com. Or you can check out the recording on their YouTube website, YouTube site, and that's youtube.com/grpva.com. And thank you very much, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Take care.